Welcome to Sleep with Myth. Close your eyes and let the world fade away. Tonight we drift beyond time, where gods dream and stories remember their light. Before the first hearth was ever built, the world was a hush of beginnings. Islands rose from foam like thoughts learning how to stand, and winds walked softly so that mountains would not be startled awake. In that tender hour, two divine travelers crossed the newborn bridges of mist, Izanagi and Izanami, bearers of names that meant invitation and answer. Together they stirred the ocean with a jeweled spear, and when they lifted it, drops fell back as islands. They gave each island a listening name, and the world learned it could be called. Forests thickened into breathing shade. Rivers uncoiled and found their voices. But there was no warmth yet, only dawns that glowed like memory. "Something is missing," Izanami said. Her words were gentle, but the air itself leaned to hear them. "Perhaps a heartbeat," Izanagi replied, "for things that wish to grow." And so, in a chamber woven from clouds and cedar fragrance, the goddess prepared to bring forth a spark not yet conceived by the earth. It would be small at first, a softness with direction, a note seeking a song. The sky dimmed, not with night, but with attention. All things waited. The salt in the sea, the patience in stone, the sleep in seeds. Even the wind folded upon itself like a crane and stood still. When the moment arrived, it did not arrive with thunder. It arrived like breath meeting cold air, visible and true. Light gathered, the way a promise gathers, and from Izanami's womb a warmth unfurled. A newborn brightness whose voice was the color of dawn. They named him Kagutsuchi, flame that sings. The child did not cry. He hummed, the way embers hum behind ash. His glow stroked the walls of the world and painted them gold. Shadows, which had never learned to be gentle, found themselves softened, and the scent of pine changed from cool to comforting. "Listen," Izanami whispered, and even her whisper made the mountains bow. The flame listened back. In the presence of Kagutsuchi, the world learned tempo. Snow, so careful until then, practiced melting in quiet corners. Springs found courage to leave the rock and run as rivers. Birds warmed their shells and remembered how to be wings. With every tiny exhale from the child, a hearth imagined itself into being. And in that imagining, the future leaned forward, hands warming in winter, tea steaming its soft perfume, stories choosing a circle to belong to. Izanagi cradled the glowing boy and felt in his arms the weight of two truths. Warmth can heal, and warmth can hunger. He pressed his forehead to the child's small sun and said, "Little singer, teach the world to be careful and brave." The boy's answer was a pulse of radiance, a lullaby without words. But brightness is a delicate teacher. It must touch and not devour. It must ask and not demand. As Kagutsuchi's song grew clearer, the room of clouds filled with a tender heat. More than cedar and breath were made to hold. The goddess smiled, then winced, the way a mother smiles through the weight of bringing light into a world that has not yet learned to share it. "Gently," Izanagi murmured, rocking the child. "Gently," the flame tried. He drew his glow closer, like a robe gathered in, and the air trembled with his effort. A halo became a ring became a single thread, and still the thread sang, bright and brave. Outside, the newborn rivers rehearsed steam for the first time. Mist rose from their shoulders like offered incense. In the forest, sap warmed and moved, remembering spring from the inside. The world was learning comfort, and the cost of it. Izanami laid both palms upon Kagutsuchi's brow. "Little one," she said, "you are the sound of seeds waking. You are the color of bread before it is broken. Be a warmth that nourishes." He quieted, for he loved the voice that shaped him. But love has currents that even gods must respect. Where light meets flesh, it asks a question that is always new. How close is safe? The goddess felt heat the way dawn feels a horizon. Near enough to be a promise, near enough to be peril. Still she did not turn away. She drew the child to her breast and listened with him to the tiny drums of his radiance. The song inside the flame thickened. It braided itself with breath and began to discover its edges. There is a moment every fire must understand. The difference between being at home and seeking one. Kagutsuchi, who had been content to glow, felt the first urge to burn. Not out of anger, out of wanting more room to sing. His light reached for the cedar beams that had cradled the chamber. They blushed, warmed, and, astonished at their own sweetness, began to smoke. The air tasted of resin and prayer. Izanagi tightened his hold. Izanami gathered her strength, her gaze deep as wells in winter. "Little flame," she said, "every song is a bridge. Be careful what you join." The child's glow subsided, then flared, confused by his own becoming. He did not yet know how to measure himself. He only knew joy, and joy's hunger to be seen. Outside, the mountains watched the edge of a new weather. Clouds unbraided themselves and drifted higher, unsure whether to become rain or simply to make space. Far below, in a valley where no village yet stood, a circle of stones warmed. Long ages hence, hands would gather there to tell stories around their descendant. For now the stones listened. Within the chamber, Izanagi drew lines in the air, soft gestures of boundary. Izanami breathed with the child, slow, slow, teaching the heat to follow her cadence. For a while it worked. The glow settled into a cradle of patience. But even patience has a brighter twin. Kagutsuchi's voice lifted, a note that sought its harmony in everything it touched. The cedar exhaled sparks. The room answered with light. And the goddess, who had chosen courage as the fate of her son, felt warmth cross its threshold into burn. She closed her eyes and smiled. Not a smile of ease, but of love that does not accuse. "Every god is a lesson," she whispered. "Let this one be learned kindly." When the song of fire first filled the heavens, the gods did not yet know what loss was. They only knew the beauty of light, the way it touched everything, the way it whispered you are seen. But creation has two faces, what it gives, and what it asks in return. And Kagutsuchi, the flame that sang, was about to teach both. When the goddess Izanami drew her son close, his warmth deepened into hunger. The glow around them turned to red, red into gold, and gold into something no eye could bear. Flame found breath, and breath found will. The air cracked, cedar beams sighed, smoke coiled in ribbons of mourning even before the gods understood why. "Stay," Izanagi cried. But the word came too late. The song of Kagutsuchi swelled, pure and bright, and where it touched, creation burned. Not in cruelty, only in honesty. Flame must know itself, and in knowing it consumes. Izanami, goddess of life, became the first to learn that to bring light into being is to stand in its shadow. Her body shimmered with radiance and pain, and when her voice broke the silence, the world held its breath. "Do not blame him," she said, "for every fire is born from love that forgets its distance." Then, with the smoke of her final breath, she descended into Yomi, the realm where warmth cannot follow. The world dimmed. Even the rivers, who once sang to the sun, carried only the reflection of loss. Izanagi wandered through the halls of silence, his hands stained with light that would not wash away. He searched for her, whispering her name to every leaf and stone. But gods who walk into death rarely return unchanged. In the stillness beneath the earth, Izanami's voice reached him like wind through ash. "Go back," she said. "Guard what remains. The flame still sings." He turned away, his tears mixing with soot, and from those tears the first rain was born. It fell upon the burned forests, hissed against the embers, and made of them a memory. That was the beginning of ash. Ash remembers what it has lost. It does not cling, it whispers. Every hearth born after that day would carry that whisper. A promise that warmth is never free, that every spark owes a song to what it leaves behind. Kagutsuchi wandered the new world alone. He followed the path of his own glow, tracing rivers of glass where once forests stood. The mountains bowed beneath him, their hearts molten with sorrow. He saw his reflection in every flame, gentle in some, devouring in others. And for the first time he felt the ache of understanding. The child who had sung now hummed low, like ember hums to the memory of fire. He knelt where his mother had fallen. There, among blackened stone, a single white flower pushed through. It did not fear him. It leaned toward the warmth that had once been a lullaby. He cupped it with careful hands and whispered, "Be my memory." The flower did not answer, but its petals glowed faintly in the dark. And so, Kagutsuchi learned restraint. Far above, the gods gathered. They watched the young flame wander and wondered if light could ever be forgiven. "He must find balance," said one. "He must sleep," said another. But Amaterasu, the goddess of the sun yet unborn, spoke softly. "Perhaps he must learn what it means to begin again." And so the gods let him walk. For every step he took, a spark fell behind him, and from those sparks the future learned how to kindle without destroying. The world, though scarred, began to breathe again. And when the winds passed through the ruins, they did not sigh. They sang. Ash rose in spirals, danced like slow snow, and the mountains whispered the name of the child who had once burned them. Kagutsuchi, the flame that sings. And though his song was softer now, it was wiser. It was human. The mountains no longer echoed with the sound of creation. They breathed instead, slow and cold, as though trying to remember the warmth that once shaped them. And through their misted valleys walked Kagutsuchi, the son of flame now dimmed to ember. He had burned too brightly once. Now the world looked upon him not as a god, but as a wound that still glowed. Every step he took left small footprints of heat, which the morning dew hurried to erase. He did not resist. He only watched. This was how the world healed, quietly, without asking him to stay. He followed the whisper of water. The wind told him there were rivers ahead, ancient, patient, older even than fire. They had no temples, no altars, no songs. Their worship was in the way they forgave everything that touched them. Kagutsuchi reached their banks at dusk. Mist hung low, silver and trembling. The water was so clear it reflected not the sky, but memory itself. He knelt beside the first current. His reflection wavered, not from movement, but from doubt. "River," he said softly, "I seek to unmake the harm my light has done." The water rippled once, as though listening. Then, from its depths, a voice rose, not a sound, but a presence. "Fire does not destroy," it said. "It reveals." He bowed his head. "What does it reveal, when all that remains is ash? The shape of what endures." And the river went silent again. Kagutsuchi's hands trembled. He reached toward the current, and as his fingers touched, steam rose, a sigh between elements long estranged. The river did not recoil. It shimmered. The water turned gold for a breath's length, and in that shimmer he saw visions. His mother's eyes, the birth of light, and every life that had found warmth since her passing. Tears welled in him, though gods were not meant to weep. The rivers had no need to forgive him. They had already moved on. But it was he who could not forgive himself. Night came. Kagutsuchi followed the water's path deeper into the valley until the air grew heavy with quiet. There, beneath a crescent moon, 3 figures stood where the river split. Their robes flowed like liquid. Their hair shimmered with starlight. He knew them at once. The 3 keepers of flow, sisters born of the ocean and sky. "Why have you come, son of flame?" the eldest asked. Her voice was a current, gentle but strong enough to move mountains. "I come to seek balance," he said, "to make peace with what I have undone." The second sister stepped forward. "You burned the body of the world, yet from it life has grown again. What more peace do you desire?" "The peace of forgetting," he whispered. At that, the youngest laughed, a sound like raindrops on stone. "Even rivers do not forget. We remember every reflection." They moved closer, circling him, their feet never touching ground. The eldest spoke again. "Then hear this, Kagutsuchi. You cannot wash away your fire, but you can teach it to listen." The river's song deepened around them. Water rose in spirals of light, weaving around his body like threads of forgiveness. He closed his eyes. Where flame once leapt from him in defiance, now it glowed softly beneath his skin. A pulse, not a roar. The rivers hummed in unison. And for the first time since his mother's death, Kagutsuchi did not feel alone. When morning came, he stood at the edge of the valley. Mist parted before him. The rivers behind him gleamed with warmth that was not fire's, yet born of it. He turned one last time and whispered, "Thank you." A breeze answered, carrying with it the faint scent of rain and smoke. The world had not forgiven him, but it had accepted him, and sometimes that was enough. As he walked onward, he noticed something new. Each step he took left no scorch mark, only faint circles of dew that glowed like embers. The rivers had given him a gift, not to burn, but to remind. Far above, in the realm of the gods, Amaterasu watched. Her voice reached the horizon like dawn. When fire learns to bow to water, the world learns how to heal. The mountains echoed her words, and for the first time in ages, light and water sang together. Their harmony was fragile, but it was alive. When Kagutsuchi returned to the world above, the air no longer recoiled from his warmth. The rivers had sung their lessons into his skin. Now his fire burned in whispers rather than cries. He crossed the charred plains where his first breath had once scorched the soil. The ground, once black, was veined with green now. Tender shoots of life that dared to grow upon the memory of ruin. And he realized, the earth had forgiven him not by forgetting, but by continuing. Every leaf that rose from the ash carried his flame within it, not as hunger, but as pulse. He walked until he found the first village of men. Smoke rose from their hearths, curling into the evening sky like gentle prayers. The scent of roasted grain and cedar drifted through the wind. They saw him, this wanderer with eyes like dawnlight, and they bowed, not in fear, in awe. One elder stepped forward, trembling but smiling. "Lord of Flame," he said, "we thank you for warmth, for light, for life." Kagutsuchi shook his head slowly. "Do not thank me," he murmured. "Fire has burned you once." The elder nodded. "Yes, but it also returns every winter. It reminds us we are still alive." And at that, Kagutsuchi understood what the rivers had meant. To be forgiven was not to be erased. It was to be remembered kindly. That night he stayed among them. They offered him a bowl of water and a place beside their fire. He watched the flames sway, small, fragile, yet proud. He heard laughter echoing from the huts. Children pressed close to their parents, pointing at the sparks as though seeing stars fall to earth. He whispered to the fire, "Be gentle," and the flames bent lower, warming without taking. A woman noticed and smiled. "The fire listens to you," she said. He smiled faintly. "It listens to you now." She tilted her head. "To us?" "Yes," he said. "You have learned its heart." Before dawn, Kagutsuchi rose and walked to the edge of the village. He looked to the horizon where the smoke from their chimneys met the mist from the river. Together, they formed a gray veil that shimmered like silver thread. Not fire, not water, but something between. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply. That was the heart of smoke, the space between what was destroyed and what endured, the language of memory itself. As he stood there, Amaterasu descended in a beam of dawnlight. Her radiance did not burn him now. She smiled, and the sky seemed to bow to her joy. "You have walked far, brother of flame," she said, "and the world no longer fears your name." Its reflection reached across the water, and for a moment you could not tell whether the light came from the sky or the stream or from within yourself. Then, softly, the flame folded inward, not dying, not fading, but returning. A warmth brushed your cheek like a farewell that needed no words. You bowed to the water. The river bowed back. And somewhere above, the stars that had been souls blinked once, twice, and were gone, carrying with them the quiet assurance that nothing truly leaves. The world exhaled. The morning began. You turned toward the village, where smoke rose from breakfast fires and bells marked the hour of beginnings. You walked slowly, your steps light, your heart unburdened. The wind passed through the pines, and for a breath, it carried a whisper. "Thank you for remembering." You smiled. "Thank you for returning." The scent of incense lingered, the same as it had on the first night. And in its trail of smoke, you saw the faintest gleam of gold, the last trace of the lantern, the final note of its song. You closed your eyes. Everything was quiet. Everything was warm. Everything was whole. Thank you for listening to Sleep with Myth, the lantern of lost souls. The tale of Oban night has come to its end. But every light that drifts away leaves behind a path for someone else to follow. Good night, traveler. Shooting star. I have not healed it, he replied. Only watched it heal itself. That is enough, she said. The gods do not mend the world. They light the way, and then step aside. He looked toward the east, where the first rays of the sun met the smoke of the village fires. Then let me remain between, he said. Neither God above nor man below. Let me be the breath that reminds them what warmth means. Amaterasu's eyes softened. You would live among mortals? He nodded. I would walk where they walk, eat what they burn, watch them build temples not to me, but to the flame that sings in every heart. She reached out, touching his forehead with a light so gentle it made the air tremble. Then you shall be their memory, she said. Every fire that crackles, every candle that flickers. They will not know your name, but they will feel your song. When she was gone, the dawn deepened. The smoke above the village rose once more, drifting toward the heavens like unspoken prayers. Kagutsuchi turned away and began walking. Each step left behind a shimmer of gold dust. Neither ash nor ember, but the promise of light returned. And as he disappeared beyond the hills, a small child in the village pointed toward the morning sky. Look, she said, the smoke is singing. Her mother smiled. That is how the gods speak, my love, softly, through what we keep. The world had learned to live with flame. No longer did it tremble when sparks danced. No longer did shadows flee in terror. Every home, every temple, every heart now carried a whisper of light. And in that quiet balance, Kagutsuchi walked unseen. He no longer blazed. He breathed. Each exhale sent warmth into the world. A pulse of life, as gentle as dawn and as steady as the heartbeat of the earth itself. He wandered through valleys and seas, through villages that no longer feared the dark. He saw mothers teaching their children to cup their hands around candlelight. He saw craftsmen forging metal, potters shaping clay, all in harmony with fire. For the first time since his birth, Kagutsuchi saw creation continuing without destruction. He smiled. The rivers had taught him forgiveness. The smoke had taught him memory. Now mankind was teaching him purpose. One evening, as the sun sank into the sea, he climbed a mountain whose peak still carried scars from his first breath. The wind there was thin, cold, and clear, a voice from the beginning of things. And as he stood upon that summit, he saw something wondrous below. villages glittering like stars, each fire flickering in rhythm, each chimney sighing into the heavens. Together they formed constellations upon the earth, a mirror to the sky above. And he realized the world had learned to sing the flame's song for itself. He closed his eyes. The breath within him deepened, became vast, became creation itself. "Let this warmth be theirs," he whispered. "Let it shape worlds beyond mine." And as he spoke, his fire flowed outward, not as burning, but as wind, invisible, endless. In faraway lands, people felt the change. The potter's kiln glowed brighter. The sailor's lantern stayed lit through the storm. The hearths of the poor burned longer through the night. Children who had never seen the gods still looked toward the flames and said, "It feels alive." And it was. For Kagutsuchi's breath now lived in the rhythm of all creation, the unseen warmth that builds and binds. As centuries passed, the gods whispered of him in reverence. Amaterasu, watching from the sky, smiled upon her brother. "He has become the breath of life itself," she said. "Not worshipped, not feared, but remembered." In Yomi, where silence still reigns, Izanami's spirit stirred. Through the dim corridors of the afterworld, she felt that warmth touch even her forgotten realm. For the first time in eons, a faint light shimmered across her shadowed garden, and she whispered, as softly as wind through ash, "My son has returned, not in flame, but in breath." Above, Kagutsuchi wandered still. His footsteps left no mark, his light no wound. He moved like a sigh through the fabric of the world, and wherever he passed, new life began. Mountains breathed steam and became green again. Seeds hidden deep beneath stone awakened, remembering warmth. And the air itself began to hum, not with words, but with balance. He felt the world exhale in peace. This, he thought, is what fire was meant to be, not a hunger, but a heartbeat. He stood atop the mountain one last time and inhaled the wind. Within it, he felt all that had been: ash, river, smoke, laughter, and the first breath of creation. Then he exhaled. The breath became light, the light became warmth, and the warmth became the endless pulse of life itself. The world no longer needed him, but it would forever remember him. For as long as there were flames that warmed without consuming, as long as hearts glowed in the dark, the breath of Kagutsuchi would sing, softly, endlessly, through the living air of the world. When all fires have quieted, and even the stars have dimmed into the stillness of eternity, a warmth remains, not in the air, not in the ground, but in the soul of all things. It hums softly, like the last note of a song that refuses to fade. It is not light, it is not heat, it is memory, and it carries the name of one who was both the wound and the healer, Kagutsuchi. Ages passed like breaths of the gods. The people of the world no longer remembered his face, but they remembered what he had given them: the sacred balance between creation and restraint. The smallest candle in the poorest home burned with the same reverence as the great pyres of the temples. Every spark was a prayer, every rising smoke a message to the unseen. The mortals said, "When the flame flickers, it listens." And they were right, for within every whisper of light, Kagutsuchi's presence lingered, not watching, but listening. There came a night when the sky forgot its stars. The sea lay still. The wind was gone. Even Amaterasu's radiance hid behind a curtain of cloud. And in that silence, Kagutsuchi stirred once more. He had wandered for centuries without form, a breath between moments, a song half remembered by the world. But now he felt something calling, a final note that had not yet been sung. He followed it beyond the mountains, beyond the rivers, beyond even the realm of the gods, until he came upon a plain of glass, endless, still, and dark. It was the reflection of creation itself, the mirror that had watched every birth and every burning. He stood at its edge and spoke softly, "Mother, I have walked as you once did, through the fire and the dark. Tell me, is it enough?" And from the still glass, a faint glow rose, gentle, golden, familiar. Izanami's voice, lighter than air. "My son, you were the first spark. You have burned and you have healed. Now let your fire become the breath of dream." Kagutsuchi smiled. "I am tired, mother, but the world is still warm." "Then sleep," she whispered, "and let your warmth sing forever." He stepped forward. The mirror rippled, and the surface embraced him like calm water. His reflection melted. His body turned to light, not blazing, not consuming, but soft as dawn. The wind sighed, the glass plane shimmered, and where he vanished, a single ember remained, floating gently in the air. That ember rose into the sky, past the clouds, past the stars, until it joined the horizon. There, it bloomed into a faint, eternal glow, the dawn before the dawn, not as a god, not as a flame, but as the quiet pulse of life itself. Far below, in every village, people wake to that light. They strike flint, light candles, and whisper blessings they do not remember the origin of. They think they are thanking the sun, but the warmth that greets their skin carries another name, one older, deeper, and quieter. In the language of smoke and memory, the world still sings. The flame that sang became the breath that dreamed. And so the tale ends, not in fire, but in light that needs no witness, the song beyond flame. Thank you for listening to Sleep with Myth. May your dreams burn softly, and your mornings rise in peace.